All right. um, Thank you for having me here, and I'm very happy and proud to be the first speaker ever of this workshop. And so, first, congratulations to the organizers because the program is very exciting. And so, I want to start this conference with a quote from a very famous man on the internet. My gut tells me more sometimes than anybody else's brain can ever tell me. So this quote actually, speaks to me a lot. And as far as I can tell, it speaks to a lot of people around me. But this is from this guy. So maybe we should not take it as granted. So I want to put a disclaimer first because I have belief as everybody else. I'm a former Stanislas Dehaene student, and I'm working on mathematical and computational model of global workspace and candidate within biological system. So this is to say that I'm a functionalist, but please don't leave already because I'm an agnostic. And this is why with other people from the field, I organized the MESEC event last summer, which is a yearly event. Every year we have a week just like this, this event with people from different background, people from different background talking for during a week about consciousness. So let's talk about today's program. So I will talk to you about the intuition we have in physics that everybody has, or most people. And then I will move to the intuition, the naive psychology that we have. And lastly, I will move to something that I hope is unexpected for you. Some people that are going to surprise you, and you maybe have a wow effect. You're going to learn stuff about yourself. And I will lastly, discuss about what we should do about these intuitions. So about naive physics. Let's do first a small experiment. This is from McCloskey. He put this little experiment in front of students. And he asked them what should be the trajectory of the ball. So you push the ball at the top of a cliff and it's going to fall from it. And what do you think going to be the trajectory of the ball? So if you think it's A, please raise your right hand. If you feel it's B, please your left. And if you think it's C, join them together. So we have a lot of different answers, and this is what's nice actually with with this experiment, because the answer is A, and a lot of people actually fail this test. And when McCloskey did that, he tested students from major of physics, and some of them actually did the same mistake. I thought it was B. So it's very shared. We have a very common intuition that it should be B. And it's the same with this experiment here. So you have like a tube here, it's a plastic tube, and you throw a ball inside, and you wonder where is the ball going to go? Is it going in this straight line, or is it going to keep the spiral going? So please put your right hand if you think it's A, and your left if you think it's B. This time everybody get it. Yeah, it's indeed it's A. So this is a very interesting experiment because it shared about people, culture, ages, and everything. And it's actually a series that was proposed by a lot of people during the Middle Age. So it seemed to be very rooted in our naive physics. And of course, as we could say, as we now know, and thanks to Isaac Newton, we know it's wrong. So this is an illustration of what we think is happening, right? Because we are wrong, but we have to ask why. So this is an experiment with a cannonball, with a cannon, shooting a cannonball. And this is what one of the students said, that the force given to the cannonball is dissipating over time and gravity is taking over. So this is the intuitive response, answer to this question. But actually Isaac Newton came and said, no, there is no force. Actually, there is a motion. So the cannon is giving a motion to the cannonball, and this is what's going to happen. You don't have a force dissipating over time. The force is not here anymore. It's just a motion. But then came Einstein and said, no, guys, there is no time either. I cannot say this because the time for you is different, of the time for the ball. And actually, when the ball is at the top of the curve, the time is different from when it's on the ground. So you cannot say this as well. And lastly, some people in Copenhagen came and said, guys, you are wrong even about the cannonball. There is no cannonball. There is no object. It's just like kind of a wave. So please give up. So this is to say that our intuition about what's happening here is far from the truth. And it's shared about, among a lot of people. Here, I try to explain what's kind of happening, right? And this is really mind, blowing here. So this is here a mass. And as you can see, I hope you can see, the time is going slower next to the mass as it is, going far from it. This is what we think is happening in the world. You don't have like the same time everywhere. You have like a different time next to the mass. And about the motion of an object, it's not like a ball moving around like a cannonball as we thought it was. It's kind of a wave as well, a wave of probability, which is just, spreading like this. So this is what's happening in the world. And it's very hard for our intuitions. It's hard to grasp this. And you need years of physics to understand what's happening here. So here are a few references to show that these intuitions are actually rooted even in toddlers. So these experiments were made with babies of 4 or 5 months. And as you can see, they have some cohesions of objects. Objects move as a whole, two objects cannot occupy the same space and time, and objects cannot move unconnected, have to move on connected path. And all of this is actually wrong, based on quantum mechanics. And there is one last interesting result with infants, is that non-physical nature of people. So these babies expect people to behave differently from objects. So this seems to have like a different intuitive physics regarding to people. So now that we see that we have these intuitions, the question is why we have them. One very easy explanation is just natural selection and evolution. They help us survive because it's better to have an oversimplified model than no model at all. So this model can actually help you, hunt this llama here. And overcomplicated model may be a waste of time and resources. And moreover, it might have been possible for natural selection and evolution to just find out about quantum mechanics and gravity anyway. So this might be the best model that we could have to help us survive. And this is to say that it's not a competition. Einstein was not better than Isaac Newton. He broke another intuition that we have, that no one thought that we could, talk about, basically. And to build science, we have to go one step at a time, and we have to break the intuitions one by one. So to sum up, we have these naive intuitions, and they are wrong in physics, at least. And they help us navigate the day-to-day world. And moreover, they help us to build some models, because the model built by Isaac Newton is relying on some intuitions about time and motions of objects. They are wrong, but they helped him to build this theory, and we wouldn't be here if he hadn't done that. So now, what are the minds but protagonists of the day-to-day life? So it's very likely that we have also these naive intuitions about how minds should behave. And this is going to be the second part. So I'm going to present some results about intuitions that are shared among societies and cultures and ages kind of all around the world. The first one is ghosts and body and spirit. So we have a lot of references in our societies, in other societies, just talking about it. So I won't go into the details, but this is one of the results. It's very easy for us to think about a body, a mind without a body. It's also very easy for us to think about some mind switching from one body to another, like basically transformation or mind control. This is something that is very shared about among our culture and other culture and all around the world. So this is leading us to some intuitive dualism. Sorry. So this intuitive dualism would be the idea that we have the intuition that the mind is behaving differently from the body. This is you need to find different laws. So this is still a debate, and I don't want to go too much into detail here. This is something that we can discuss later. But this intuitive dualism means that you have to give up the physical closure. You have different rules about the mind, and you cannot study it just by studying physics. You need to have something else. And so this is a very strong intuition, and people actually disagree about that. And it's one of the main intuition that we have and is discussed today. And yeah. But so there is a question about should we consider these intuitions differently? Should we accept this intuitive dualism? So this is what Chalmers actually is saying, that consciousness directly gives rise to the intuition about phenomenal experience. So they are different. And because they are different, you have these ontological distinctions, they can be trusted because they are talking about the mind. So we have reasons to trust them. To me, it's just a belief, just another one. And if we don't need this kind of, explanation to explain the behaviors and everything, we won't need to have this. And in the end, it's just like, assuming that God exists. But this is just my belief, and we can discuss this later if you think it's, if you think differently. Anyway, for now, we just discussed very simple intuitions, right? So the ghost intuition is very easy to debunk. It's very easy to say, okay, there is no, spirit with no body. Just like it's easy to say, okay, Earth is actually not flat, it's kind of round. But as we saw before, you have, physics, results in physics, which are kind of mind-blowing and very hard to grasp. So could we find some hard to grasp phenomenon about, intuitive psychology? Could we find some stuff which are so deeply, rooted in us that we never thought that we could question them? And this is what I'm gonna propose here. The first one is the unity thesis. So Tim Bain actually wrote a book about it. And it's the idea that we are one. When Descartes said, I think, therefore I am, he said I, not we, not they, not anything else. He just said I. And so we have these very strong intuitions that we are one thing, not many, not a collection of stuff. We are just one entity. And it's in all the theories, most of the theories of consciousness, it's actually something that you can find. Unity is one of the axioms of IIT. It assumes that you have, these unity of the consciousness, whatever consciousness is. In global workspace as well, you have the global workspace. You have one object, and consciousness is linked to this object. And whenever we think about consciousness, we think as, one whole which would maybe interact or whatever. The other property is the continuity of the self. So I believe strongly that I am the same as the one I was yesterday when I went to sleep. I believe that I'm the same as the one I was when I was a kid, when I was 10 years old, looking at the sky and wondering if the blue I was seeing was the same as the blue my sister was seeing. So we have this idea that our conscious experience, ourself, is, the same day after day, and we just have these memories of us, but we keep being the same. But in the end, we have no proof of this, and this is just like a strong intuition. And I also have the intuition that if, yesterday night when I was sleeping, some alien came and, kidnapped me, made a clone and put it in my bed, and actually I'm the clone, I would not be the same as the one I was yesterday. This one would be with the alien, in a cell or in a lab or whatever, but I wouldn't be the same. So we have this sense of continuity. There is something that is same, which is staying. And in these two theories, so of course you have more theories of consciousness, but I'm just sticking to these two because it's easier. In global workspace, you have this same global workspace. You have something which is staying, here all the time. And in IIT, you also have this kind of maximum phi complex. So of course it's evolving. It's not one of the axioms, but you have this idea that the maximum phi complex is kind of still here all the time. But of course, we can debate about that. So another property which I find very interesting about, consciousness and the intuition we have is when we think about a conscious agent, we assume that it has some cognitive properties. We assume when we think about, nature as a conscious agent, this is very popular. We think that nature can actually perceive, can feel, can have memories about stuff, volition and intelligence. And I like this example a lot because a lot of my friends, scientists, neuroscientists, who are believing in IIT, when they say that, for instance, a tornado could be conscious based on an IIT theory, they actually talk about it as it has feelings and memory, as it can choose what it's doing. So when we think about a conscious agent, we're going to assume all these properties. And I think it's kind of quite interesting because this is not what IIT is saying. IIT is just talking about conscious experience, but intuitively, we're going to assume that this means all these cognitive functions. And lastly, we assume that there is a causal action of consciousness on matter. I love this is drawing, because he's exactly making the point. This is like a capitalist polluting the world and making climate change and everything. And this is a nature. And as you can see here, nature is kind of conscious because it has eyes and, you know, feelings and whatever. So this is a conscious nature. And here nature is striking, you know, striking back and sending some viruses, which is actually COVID in this picture, but whatever. And what is very interesting is here is the, you know, the artist here assumes that the nature was conscious. And because it was conscious, it could act. This consciousness has some action of matter, could modify the world. And once again, when you talk about, you know, when you think about IoT and stuff like this, and you imagine that the tornado is conscious, you imagine that it can change its trajectories. But once again, this is not what IoT is saying. It's not because you have consciousness that you can actually, you know, control the world and change your body. It's very intuitive for us because we can control our body with our mind, but consciousness does not mean that you have some control over matter. So to sum up, we have, I mean, I proposed before properties, but just my opinion. The two first are kind of assumption about what is consciousness. We're going to assume we need to have this property to have consciousness. And the two second is some consequences of consciousness. But as I was saying, it's just my opinion. So maybe there are a lot more of them. And the question is now what to do next, because we have these intuitions and they are likely to be wrong, as we saw with intuition in physics. But it's all right, because we need these intuitions to build the first model of consciousness. We are, I believe, in a pre-scientific phase of consciousness science. But to build the first model, to build something, we have to go from somewhere. We have to keep some assumptions because they are just helping. So it's nice to have these intuitions and we should use them as much as we can. But we have to stay agnostic because there are intuitions and intuitions are models. So we should just, keep this in mind. And that's it for me. Thank you, guys.